Next up, we have Dr. Stacy Wood. She's with marketing at North Carolina State University. For those of you that were here for the first session of TEDx NCSU, Jeff Huber spoke a little bit about happiness and how the Danes approach happiness. So Dr. Wood's talk is also about happiness and buying happiness, and I'm really interested to see her perspective on it. Hopefully it's not quite so depressing as some of Jeff's remarks.
Thank you. So I am going to be talking about happiness, and hopefully it will make you a little happier when we get to the end of it, because I have the great joy to study something that's a passion of mine, and that is consumer psychology. The why and the how of how we spend our money, how we spend our time, and what we do with our stuff and what it means to us. And it's a good thing that I like it, because I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do spend our money and our time, and how much time we really do spend in our careers. So you've heard this sentence, right? You can't buy happiness. I think we all know that that's true. Is that correct? Yeah. Well, we wonder, right? We act a little differently, but we all say we understand that we can't buy happiness. Happiness isn't at a store, on a shelf. We all understand that in our lives, what makes us happy are the people, the practices, the community, the heritage. And so we see that in our daily lives, and we believe it. We really believe it. But when it comes right down to it, we act. We act as if we could buy happiness. And so here's my evidence. Time. I think you can tell what people value based on where they put their time. And if you look at America, where we put our time is in our work. We spend so much time at work. And when I talk to college students, I often meet college students in the College of Management who are passionate about business and really excited to do something specific. But I also meet other students. I also meet the kinds of students who would rather really be doing something else. Maybe they'd like to paint pictures or cut hair or be park rangers, but somebody somewhere in their lives has told them that doesn't pay. And probably the people in this room have a lot of passion for what they do, but still you feel the pull, don't you? You say, oh, I'd love to go and do this. I'd love to spend a year and go and study this fascinating situation. And maybe it's your parents, maybe it's someone else. Someone says, who's going to pay you to do that? You know, how much does that pay? And so what we do, of course, is that we choose majors and we choose jobs that will give us good money. And so we work really hard for this money because deep down, I think we believe that you can buy happiness. Now, you better like what you're going to do, because here are some daunting numbers from John DeGraff, who's the author of Affluenza. 300. 300 is the number of hours that Americans work each year more than Europeans. That's a lot of weeks. 4. That's the minimum number of mandated vacation weeks that Europeans receive. Now, many of you are students, but for those of you who are working stiffs like me, imagine what you would do with a month off. I know, a month. Now, don't get too jealous yet, because while 4 is the mandated minimum, 6 is the average number that most Europeans take. 6 weeks of vacation every year. Now, we believe at some point that the people that we love, the time we spend building relationships, that's what makes us happy. And vacation is a major time when we connect with people, when we build those relationships, when we have those times that we think about for the rest of our lives. And so vacations are important for the things that make us happy. But where are we? We're at work. So basically, last year, 24% of Americans took only 1 week of vacation, and 28% took none at all. Now, you probably know some of those people. I know some of those people. I am occasionally one of those people. We work, work, work. And you might say, well, it's good to be hardworking, and I want to work, and working is important. And I absolutely agree with you. But I think that the thing is that we work with an understanding that we want to be successful. However we define success, we want to be successful. And we want to be successful, and what successful often means in our culture is being promoted. And have you ever noticed that very few people say, I'd like to be promoted simply for the new responsibilities? I don't care if it doesn't pay anymore. No, of course not. We only want the promotion if it comes with a pay increase. So we're working because we want to be successful, and successful means we move up the ladder, and moving up the ladder means we get more money. So at some point, we are acting as if you can buy happiness. We think you can't buy happiness, but we act like you can because we spend our time earning more and more money to spend on stuff. Now, I want you tonight to go home and look in your closets, look on your credit card statements, and look in your purse. And I think you'll find what I find, which is that I've got a lot of stuff. Just stuff. Stuff I don't know about, stuff I don't really even actually care about. Sometimes I find things in my purse that I didn't know I owned. I have a big purse. But the thing is that so much of this stuff isn't where our passion is. And so I think that in a lot of times, what we end up doing is we end up buying unhappiness in a way. We end up making decisions that aren't healthy, aren't good. When we look at American consumers, there's so many practices that aren't optimal. Just to give you a few depressing figures before I move to the good stuff. We have divorce, we have debt, we have the death of the American dream, people unable to buy houses or fund their educations. And it's largely because of some bad consuming practices that we have engaged in. And so you might ask yourself, well, how did we get here? How? How did we get to this place where we have so much money and so much stuff? And you might say, well, we don't have enough money. Oh, trust me. According to the rest of the world, we have plenty of money. And some people might say, oh, but it's really important to work for money because we don't just want stuff, we want security. And I would say that the savings rate has gone down to 0 and crept back barely above that. We clearly aren't spending our money on security. What we're spending it on is stuff. And yet, in studying consumers and studying practices of consumption, I don't think that this is happening because we're bad or greedy people. My field studies this and has found that there are 3 kinds of reasons why we get into problems with spending. And the first one, you guys are familiar with the term retail therapy? Yeah, this is the practice where you feel not so great, you go out and buy something to cheer yourself up. And it might be a mochaccino, and it might be a new pair of shoes, and it might be anything. Retail therapy is a very true thing. In that moment when we go to a store, we get a surge of good feeling that comes from going into a place, seeing a product that does not belong to us, and saying, I would like that. I'm going to take that home. It's yours now, but I'm going to have it. I've got this piece of plastic that says I can. And you go in and you physically take it, and you take it to the cash register, and you hand over your plastic, and then you leave with it, and it's yours. And it feels good. And why does it feel good? I mean, think about how we were hunters and gatherers, right? In olden times, this was what we did. We went out and got stuff. And so now going to the store gives us that same comforting thrill. It makes you feel like I am in control of this situation. I took something that I before did not have. Now, it might explain that power, that feeling of control, why so many of the people who get into real trouble with credit and get into debt with overspending are people who don't feel in control of their lives. When you don't feel in control of your life, when you are feeling unempowered, uncertain, insecure, that moment of buying something gives you a feeling that you don't get in other places in your life. So it's not surprising when sometimes the people who have the least opportunities find themselves to be the most in this situation. Well, unfortunately, with credit, obviously there are hidden costs. Research in consumer psychology shows that people are terribly illiterate when it comes to finances. When it comes to understanding what interest rates are, what annual rates are, in terms of understanding what you're actually spending on things, it's really unusual that people look at a product in the store, say that's $10, but I understand that if I buy it and pay for it with my credit card over time, it could cost me $100. Nobody really sees that it's hidden. And so we go to the store, we feel some power, we don't totally understand what it costs, and then what kicks us in the bottom is the hedonic treadmill. Now, if you've heard of this, the hedonic treadmill is the fact that we as humans adapt to our situations. We tend to get used to things once they become the status quo to us. And so many of you are students and you won't recognize this quite yet, but in my family, the way this happens is that I look and I say, you know what? It is a sad thing that I am a distinguished professor at a top institution and I don't have granite countertops in my kitchen. How has this happened? I'm successful, right? I need this stuff. So, so at great expense, I replace my perfectly functional countertops with granite countertops. And then what happens? Then my appliances look old. I'm so used to the countertops are beautiful. Now I need stainless steel appliances. So you get these stainless steel appliances, they look great, your countertops look great, but now your floor looks terrible. Need some new wooden flooring. And it goes like this until when the kitchen's perfect, suddenly the dining room is looking pretty shabby. We go on like that, right? We get on this hedonic treadmill where we have one thing, and rather than reveling in our granite countertops for a while, it just makes us want to go on to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So soon we find that we're driving a new car simply because our granite countertops made our dining room look shabby. This is how it happens. And so my research recently has made me think about how we've gotten into a situation where what we have is we have a habit for stuff. It's not that we're greeting people, but somehow we have gotten into this frame of thinking. We've gotten into this sort of mindless acquisition. We have a habit. We have a bad habit, but it's a habit, and it's a habit of stuff. And in consumer behavior, we often talk about this as involvement, the extent to which people are thinking about and being deliberate about their choices. But we could also think about it as just sort of like a mindlessness. So I want to tell you guys about some research that I've done with colleagues at the University of South Carolina and at the University of Maryland. And it's a study where we wanted to look and try and find out what is the appeal of luxury brands. Like, what's the actual appeal of them? We read some interesting data that showed that luxury brand sales did not decline as much as you think they should over our recent economic woes. That, in fact, luxury brands stayed very strong. You'd think we'd go, forget these luxury brands, but no, people actually clung to them. And so we wanted to look at that. And what I mean by luxury brands is I mean brands that, by their definition, are generally assumed to be high quality, exclusive, expensive, and with an aesthetic value beyond utilitarian needs. And these luxury brands are developed not only through advertising, but also through shared cultural meaning. So if we all got together, we could probably agree what are luxury brands. Now, with this study, I decided that it would be very impressive if my father would appreciate that this is a neuroeconomic study, meaning we looked at brain imaging. So yeah, my engineering father even thought this was pretty cool. We wanted to look at the effect of luxury brands using neuroeconomic research. And so if you've ever had an MRI done, you recognize this machine behind me. Basically, you lay flat on a table, you're put into a tunnel that has a big magnet over it, and this magnet moves, and what results is, like you can see here, we can see inside the brain. And it's very, very neat. As a marketer, I never thought I'd get to work at the hospital and wear a white coat. That's also very fun. So we get to see pictures of the brain, but more importantly, we get to see what are known as fMRIs, functional magnetic resonance images, meaning we get to see the brain working. We get to see what parts of the brain are active while people are exposed to different things while they're in this magnet. Now, what are they exposed to? In this case, they were exposed to trials in which they saw 3 words and then saw 3 logos. And we wanted to measure brain activity while they were seeing those logos. So 3 words and 3 logos. Now, this was an experiment, meaning we had to have these different groups in different trials. So we had 2 different kinds of words. We had words associated with indulgence and words associated with frugality. So indulgence words were things like couture, designer, distinctive, and the frugality words were words like budget, conscientious, control. And so people saw 3 words, and then they saw 3 logos, and we had 2 different kinds of logos. I think you see where I'm going with this. We had luxury brand logos, and we had what we called practical brand logos. Now, we did pre-test these brands to make sure that they were equally liked. And so what we found is this. I think you see the thing. We found greater activation in the rostral anterior cingulate cortex when people heard indulgence words and then saw luxury logos. So here we have a picture that shows that activation. People saw indulgence words and then saw luxury logos. That's when this rostral anterior cingulate cortex was active. Now, what does that part of the brain do? It's the part of the brain that does goal evaluation. Think of it kind of as the keystone between motivation and desire. You know, it's the part that gets us fired up about stuff and deciding that we want to go after it. And that only happened for luxury brands when it was preceded by these indulgence words. And we thought that was really interesting because what we think that means is that people are consuming happiness because they are surrounded by messages in which they're surrounded by messages that tell them to indulge. If you think that we don't have indulgence cues in our society, all you have to do is turn on the television and watch commercials. They're around us all over the place. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we consume so much. So in conclusion, what should we do if we want to consume happily? Well, we should really consider how we spend our time. Don't spend your time in a way that is not furthering your goals of family, relationships, and things you're passionate about. And don't think that that means that you just have to stop spending. Oftentimes it sounds like what I'm saying is, we don't care about spending, you should stop spending, ignore products. And that's not it. A friend of mine wanted to join a group that was doing road cycling. And he only had a mountain bike. And so one day he tried to go out with his mountain bike and keep up with his cycling friends, and it didn't work. And he really, really, really wanted to buy a road cycle, but he said, oh, I can't do it. They cost like $700. I don't have that money. So we figured out that he eats out about 7 times a week every time he orders iced tea. He spends $1.89 every time he orders iced tea at the restaurant, 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. He started drinking water and bought a bike. So choose well. Choose well. And because we know that those indulgent messages are going to make us yearn more, want more, the luxury logos that marketers ply, I just want you to think about unplugging sometimes. Don't go to the mall. Don't read a magazine. Don't watch the television shows that tell you your kitchen isn't good enough. Just unplug a little bit from the messages and buy the things that really do make you happy. Thank you.